Because the biggest mistake when it comes to Canton Coin is people just don't know how it's used. They don't know how the network is supposed to work. They don't know how Canton Coin is going to be affected by the network working. So let's start off with the cleanest statement I can make. CC is not the money. Canton can't handle payments. CC doesn't have liquidity. These are the things we hear about Canton Coin when we're talking about announcements that are coming in. Let me explain exactly how the Canton network works so you guys can understand exactly how CC works and is affected. So, the asset is a tokenized US Treasury. The money is USDCX or digital dollars or digital bank deposits, tokenized bank deposits, and the infrastructure is Canton Network and the Canton Coin. Canton Coin buys network capacity. It does not settle the trade. Security and cash are the actual economic transaction, and CC is the cost of moving those messages. Think of the Canton Network as a digital post office that can't open the envelopes, right? Franklin Templeton is a participant. They handle a sealed envelope to the sequencer. Virtue Financial is a participant. They handle a sealed envelope to the sequencer. TradeWeb, same thing. The sequencer can't read the content. It only sees the metadata, the recipients, the size, and the timing. It gets passed over to the mediator who coordinates the final verdict or settles the transaction. The participants validate their own view, meaning everything settles or nothing settles at all. Coordination without a global ledger view. Payloads are encrypted so that the sequencers can only see the metadata. So it's a lot like a post office. To give you an example of an exact transaction that took place on the Canton network, July 1st, 2026, TradeWeb performed the execution, price discovery, and execution. The asset came from Franklin Templeton with a tokenized US Treasury. The cash leg came from Virtue Financial with USDCX. It's split into two different encrypted views. View A is the Treasury leg. View B is the cash leg. Each participant validates only its view, and the mediator aggregates and confirms it. TradeWeb's wording, synchronized on-chain settlement. Both legs settle or the transaction does not. And as we walk through this entire transaction, the first question people should be asking, so where was Canton Coin? Nowhere. Franklin Templeton didn't need it, Virtue didn't need it, and the cash leg was not in CC. But if you look under the transaction, there's a validator, there's network traffic. That's what burns the CC. The user uses the application and the infrastructure pays the network, and then the infrastructure is rewarded. We're going to talk about that. This is where CC actually burns. There is 400 kilobytes of free activity every 20 minutes for every participant. Free tier packets flow for free. However, if you exceed that free tier, you have to pay $60 per megabyte that is actually paid for in CC and then burn. A minimum top up is 200,000 bytes or $12. If you want to understand how this works, the bytes times the megabytes divided by the CC price gives you the amount of CC burned. The trade does not buy CC. The trade isn't what burns the CC. The infrastructure is what does all of that, creating the littlest amount of friction for the institutional participants. Now, one thing no one reported on, I checked, or at least that I could find, the network actually changed the price. The same bytes have a different cost. On August 8th of 2024, it was costing about about $17 per megabyte. On January 29th, 2025, it changed to $60 per megabyte. That was a 3.6x just in the cost of the same traffic. Also happened when they did the halving. But here's the part that majority of people miss. A small transaction of $500 can use the same exact payload size as a large transaction of $500 trillion. The notional value does not determine how much Canton Coin is burned. It does not charge by the amount of dollars settled. It charges by the traffic, it charges by the data, and it charges by the megabytes used. And burn is only half of the equation. Because of the burn to mint equilibrium, we must understand the mint. So by now, people should understand network usage, megabytes, is actually burns the CC. However, if you look at the other side, we have to understand the mint. Currently, right now, at 10 billion CC a year, it gets halved to 5 billion in 2029, and then permanently 2.5 billion in 2034. It does one round every 10 minutes or 144 rounds a day. 5% goes to the development fund, and the remaining issuance is split up 58.9% to the apps, 17.1% to the validators, and 19% to the super validators. So by performing activity, volume, right, actually participating in the network is the only way to earn CC. Now we can build a real Canton network thesis. More transactions, more network messages, more bytes. Number 2, larger payloads, meaning more complex transactions. When we talk about a transaction of sending $500 million from one place to another, that's one asset and two participants. However, if we're looking at multiple different assets, multiple different participants, insurance, collateral, data, and everything else that goes along with it, that transaction gets more complex, uses more data, and increases the payload of the transaction. The dollar amount of the transaction is not what's going to increase the dollar charged for that transaction. The complexity of the transaction and how many participants and assets are involved is what can increase the payload of the transaction. The other thing that can increase the payload of the transaction is they could simply charge more. The governance controlled more dollars for traffic. They've already done it once. They've already increased it from $17 to $60 one time. They could do it again. And number 4, more locked CC. They could increase locking. They've already done it twice, causing super validators to lock 70% of all their minted CC rewards, and featured applications having to lock 5 or 25 million, depending on their contribution to the actual network. So again, CC demand is the traffic times the traffic price, not necessarily the dollars settled. It's the dollars in traffic, not the notional dollars that run through the global synchronizer. So when people say it did 9 trillion in volume, but it didn't do anything for the token price, now that might make a little bit more sense why. We need more volume, not more notional value running through the global synchronizer. So stop watching the wrong number. People want to look at $384 billion a day, or 9 trillion, or 114 trillion by the DTCC. CC is not the money. It's the meter. Watch the meter. And the only way to increase the burn to mint equilibrium meter is to have more US dollar fees burned, to make sure that the burn outpaces the mint. Because right now, CC is still inflationary and is battling against that burn to mint equilibrium. And that is all of the information. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Let's hop into the chat and see what everyone's doing, how everyone's doing. And today we are going to do a longer hangout. Actually, before I get into the hangout, let me do this, because I have some information for you guys. Thank you, Crypto Eerie, for pointing this out. Now, this shouldn't be news to most of you, but I like for people to hear it from someone other than me, or under a random tweet on X. This is Eric Saranecki, one of the co-founders of Digital Asset and the Canton Network. Let's see what he has to say about Canton Coin.
Aligned on the and then the last thing that I'll say, this is not super well known, but we've been talking about this for a while, is that we're in process of proposing to the network a universal burn pricing mechanism, meaning it won't matter whether you use the global synchronizer or a private synchronizer, burn, 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 burn. And again, our purpose here is just to make sure that every part of the ecosystem is aligned on the value of the coin to coin holders and network holders. And then the last thing that I'll say, this is not super well known, but we've been talking about this for a while.
Burn. We want the burn. We want to see more burn. That was from Eric Serenecki, one of the co-founders. But again, that should not be news to most of you who watch this channel. But next, Yuval Ru's collateral management is one of the biggest opportunities for public blockchains, and I've said it more than a few times, on this channel. Now he says, we're proving it, working alongside giants like NASDAQ and Vanguard Group to capture this on-chain activity in real time. And now my mouse isn't working. I'm having all kinds of computer problems today. Don't know why my Bluetooth mouse disconnected, but now it's working. Okay. Roland Chai at NASDAQ just wrote a great recap of how tokenized collateral is becoming an operational reality. And if you guys read this, it says how NASDAQ is turning tokenized collateral into operating reality on the Canton Network. NASDAQ working tightly with the Canton Network. Again, do your own research.